Wonderful to be here. So first of all, I think some of you actually answered this poll, right? So let's start here. I'm from Gapminder, and we're a small non-profit based in Sweden, and we do educational material. Basically, we try to make the big global trends and slow proportions of the world easier to understand. And we could say we work to promote a fact-based worldview that everyone can understand in different ways. So the basic thing we do is that we fight 3 mega misconceptions. One is that the world is divided in 2. One is the world is getting worse. This is what people think. And the third is population just keeps growing. So on a conference about the future, I think we should start by looking at the present, and then we will look into the future. So I'm going to show you 3 of the questions you were answering. And the first one, the global climate. Now it's in English because I actually don't speak Spanish. So I hope that the questions you got was actually the right ones. So here, do the experts think that the climate will become cooler, warmer, or stay the same? Warmer is the right answer. And in the US, actually 81% got it right, because we've asked this question in 14 countries, and I'm going to compare your results with the country results. So this is how the countries did. And you can see, actually, in many countries, people actually know that the climate is supposed to get warmer, right? So what about you? Where did you end up? Well, you did pretty good, right? You're not as good as Hungary, but almost. What about vaccination? 80% of the kids are actually vaccinated nowadays. I compare with the US because I think that's fun, right? This is how the US population answered. 17% got it right. And this is how the rest of the countries answered. And you can see it's pretty bad results. Japan, 6%, Spain, 13%, and so on. And Sweden is pretty good up there in the top, but still it's only 21%. And what is the problem here? If I would have asked you to answer a question with 3 answer alternatives, A, B, and C, without giving you a text in the question, you would actually score 33% right. So something is going on. Why do everyone end up on the bad side? They are not that random. If they would have been chimpanzees, they would have gotten 33% right in each country by random, right? But you don't. So what about you? Look, 34. On the par with the chimpanzee, at least. That's pretty good, right? So what about schooling? How many years have girls in the world, or women 30 today, gone to school? 9 is the correct answer. 6% of the US population got it right. Pretty good for this. Belgium at the bottom with 13%. Still, no one beat just guessing without reading. And what about you? Here you're not as good, but still you beat a few of them, right? So what is going on here? We tested in these 14 countries, and actually 15% of the people tested got 0 right on the 13 questions you got. 0, not a single right. This is how it turned out in the rest. And we actually had 1 person scoring 11 right, and we had no one scoring 12. Actually, I have removed the climate question. That is more like a control question where everything gets it right. But as soon as you ask about anything else about the world, it's pretty bad results all the time. So what is happening here? Well, it's actually only 10% answered better than the chimps. It's pretty bad. So how do we do then? Well, it's probably a problem with our brains, how we deal with information. And it's also how we get the information. Most of us don't go to the statistics. Instead, we watch the news. And in the news, we see disasters, war, refugees. We see happy places, exotic places. We see cute animals. And we see cultures doing cultural rights. And then we try to combine these things into our worldview, but it only combines all these extraordinary events. We do not get anything of the normal into here. And when we ask people how they think the world, if it's getting better or worse, you can see most of them, here's the US for example, most actually think that the world is getting worse. But start looking at these charts. You don't have to look at them in detail. First, we're going to look at a few things that has actually decreased, which is a good thing. Less children die, less soldiers are dying, HIV infections go down, plane crash deaths go down, smallpox, hunger, child labor, you get the idea. Then we have other things going up, women's right to vote, literacy, girls in school, new movies, child cancer survival, better water, and so forth. So it's a lot of things that are actually getting well. It doesn't mean that everything is good. It doesn't mean that everything will be perfect, but it is actually improving. So thinking about that, what about where do people live? We have 1 billion in Americas, 1 in Africa, 1 in Europe, and we have 4 in Asia. So the PIN code of the world is 1114. And looking into the future, we will see this is what's going to happen. We split into North and East, North and South America, and West and East Europe. And look here, this is where the future world population will be. There will be basically no one around here. Nothing will happen. So to understand the world, we should think about it as 4 levels. We have the poorest level, we have this level, level 2, level 3, and we have level 4. And most of us in this room, I would guess, we are on level 4, basically among the richest. And what we can do now is that we can see how life is on these different levels and how many people live on each level. First, we have 1 billion people today live in the poorest group. We have 3 billion people living on level 2, 2 billion on level 3, and 1 billion on level 4. And if we look at the drinking water, this is what it looks like. For the poorest, you probably go by foot and collect your water. Then, level 2, you may have a bike. Level 3, you will have a tap, probably outdoors. And level 4, you have hot and cold water indoors. We can have a look at transportation. The poorest, you walk by your bare feet. The next level, you might have a bike, you might have a motorcycle, and then you have a car on the richest end. And then you have cooking. You go from cooking over open fire to having some kind of a stove, and to have like a stove indoors with several plates. And sleeping, how you go from sleeping on the floor to having a full bed. You go from brushing your tooth with using your fingers to having a toothbrush, plastic, to having one each in the family, and to have some kind of another toothbrush. So we constructed a project that we call Dollar Street to work with this. And then we sent out photographers to homes all over the world. And we look at all these different items. We see how people sleep, how they cook, and how they play. And what we do then, here's the tool. Observe here, you have the street on the top that I was talking about with the levels. So we have the poorest people in the world living to the left, the richest to the right, and everybody else in between. Here are some of the families we have visited, and this is a website that is free, and you can go in and you can pick to compare immediately, for example, dish brushes. So it's items you have in your home, and we can compare them. See how people are from different countries in all these examples, and we can see the world by household items. Because one of the things that is a problem with all the extraordinary imagery we see in the media is that we see nothing that is like everyday items, and we get this negative, weird image. We also collect videos of people doing everyday things. Now we start at the richer end of the street, and we go gradually down, and see how everyone is brushing their teeth using a plastic toothbrush, no matter where they are. But then some are very serious when they do that. But then when we go down, you will see people stop having even ability to afford a plastic toothbrush, and they start using a stick or the finger like her. So in the Dollar Street material, we tag the imagery, like this one, for instance. It's tagged not only as her wall, but also as her toothpaste, because that is how she uses it. So we can have a quick look here. Here we see the US population. We zoom in. We can see a house in the richer end. Here we see a family, the Howards. And we can see their house. We can see a house in the poorer end of the US, the Hadleys. And now we can look into the cutlery drawers. And we can see the big difference it actually pays to live on different income levels. We can add another family, the Robinsons. And we can look at the cutlery drawers and see the gradual change depending on the income. The kitchen sinks, living rooms. We can do the same in China, of course. 3 homes, 3 families, their houses, their sofas, and how they cook. Very often we say it's the Chinese culture to cook this or that way. But actually, a lot can be explained by income. Cool thing is when we start comparing China and US. And we look at 2 homes at the richer end, the Howards and the Woos. Look into their bedrooms. Pretty much the same. Leather sofas and similar play structures. We can go to the other end and see Nigeria. Zoom in. A home in China, a home in Nigeria. Look pretty different, don't they? This is their roof, their sofas, their grains, their fish they're going to have for dinner, and this is how they cook. And you can see they cook in completely identical ways, even though we are in so different parts of the world. So cultural stereotypes very often is a bad way of explaining how people live. Income is much better. So if you saw here, you could actually see that the images we see in the media are so far away from the images we see in Dollar Street. And Dollar Street is free for anyone to use, actually, on the web, dollarstreet.org. And we can see what happens to the world population over time. Here we see the world population. In 1800, there were 1 billion people in the world. Now there are 7, and people think this is what's going to happen, right? But according to the UN, this is what has happened. Before, a family of 2, a man and a woman, had a lot of kids, but most died. So that is the old balance. We started getting better societies, got more kids to survive, and we had a huge boom in population. Now, families decide to have fewer kids, and we have a new balance. And this is what the UN is expecting to happen. The population will increase, but it will actually flatten off. And how can that be? How can the population increase if 2 adults get 2 kids? It should not increase, should it? Well, this is the explanation. We call it the fill-up. This is today. You have 2 billion kids at the bottom, their parents above, and then you have older people going up. Played over time, we see the old people sadly die, everybody else grow older and get new kids. And suddenly, 15 years from now, we're 8 billion. Do the same, get new kids, we're 9 billion. Do the same, get new kids, we're 10 billion suddenly in 2060. And 2075, we're actually supposed to increase the population even a little bit more by an aging population. So this is what is expected to happen. But this is the income distribution of the 4 regions of the world. Asia is the pink one, the yellow one is Europe, the green is Americas, and the blue is Africa. You see the line, that is the absolute poverty. Until 1930s here, you can see a lot of the populations were actually in absolute poverty, in extreme poverty. But see what happens, how fast these countries or these regions are actually improving. Can you see the change? It's just moving all the time. And we can actually do the same for Chile. This is in the 1800s. Most of the population lived in poverty, extreme poverty. But as we play it forward, you see, the population grows. That's why the mountain is actually getting bigger. But see also how they move out of poverty. And actually, now, there is just a little tiny thing left in the poverty area. So you could see here, this is the Americas, And you could say this is how the population of the Americas, in every box is 100 million, and how they are placed. There are actually no 100 millions any longer on level 1. And this is how it's looking for the other countries. In 2040, this is what we are expecting to happen. Basically, there are more people in the Americas, and they will be mainly on level 4. No one is supposed to be in level 1 at this point. So this is what the world is going to look like in the future. So what we need is basically, we need a framework to understand the world. We need to control our brain, and that we do because the brain has these dramatic instincts that we need to control. And we can do that in different ways. So here, we have developed a few rules of thumb. Basically, how you can train your brain to handle the information you're drowning in from the media. And you can find it actually here in the book Factfulness that will be out in April, that will be written to actually help you to understand the world better and to actually help you train your brain to handle the information. And one more thing that we think should be done is actually on the papers, we should have a warning sign to remind ourselves. You've seen those on the cigarettes, maybe, where it says, warning, you should not smoke, smoke kills you, basically. We should have the same on the media. So we're always constantly reminded that it actually interferes with our brains. So we should remember that the news often make things seem much more alarming than they are. So you can go to the Dollar Street, to the Gapminder, and if you have any questions or want to ask something, write something to the info@gapminder.org. And if you have not already answered all the questions, do it here. You can go to Gapminder's website and do the test we have called the Gapminder test. And there you can get a certificate if you score 100% right on the questions. And I hope that you understood by now, basically picking the best of the 3 alternatives will do. Thank you.